Hi everyone, I hope you're ready. I am. I've got my thinking cap on to think about how we use unit ratios to find amounts. So remember last time we talked about flatbread, and the recipe for that was a ratio of 3 cups of flour to 2 cups of yogurt. Now if you don't remember, that's okay. Click on the little eye in the corner and it will take you through that video. Now we ask questions such as, if we had 5 cups of yogurt, how much flour would we need? Now let's highlight all the important information. So 3 cups of flour to 2 cups of yogurt. What we did last time was to find a unit ratio by dividing by the second amount, which is 2 in this case, and we had 1.5 to 1, which meant that there are 1.5 cups of flour to every cup of yogurt. So when we wanted to know for 5 cups of yogurt how much flour we needed, we had to simply multiply by 1.5 to give us the answer. How about when we had 2 cups of flour, how much yogurt would we need? This was a little bit more annoying to figure out because this time the ratio is still 1.5 to 1 and we had 2 on the left side and we had to work out something on the right side and we had to divide. To figure out the yogurt which was on the right, you had to divide. To figure out flour which was on the left, you had to multiply. But could you multiply to figure out something on the right? Yes, you can if you didn't use the unit ratio. So if you divided by flour to figure out for 1 cup of flour how much yogurt you would need, then you could multiply that ratio to get how much yogurt you would need. So in this case, we wanted 2 cups of flour, how much yogurt? Then we will multiply by that ratio to get the total number of yogurt. Let's use equivalent fractions, something that we're more familiar with, to make equivalent ratios something a little bit easier to understand. Now recall that a half is equal to 5 over 10. Now we can flip both of them and we would get 2 over 1 is equal to 10 over 5. That makes sense. But you cannot flip just one side because you would get a half equals to 10 over 5. Which makes no sense at all because that's a half and that's 2 really. So you can flip both or keep them as they are. So remember that we're going to use that in equivalent ratios in just a sec. So with equivalent ratios, we have flour to yogurt, 3 to 2. Let's do a really simple example with equivalent ratios and look at the method we use so we can apply it for more difficult questions. So here we have 3 cups of flour and 2 cups of yogurt. A really simple question I could ask is, well, if I had 4 cups of yogurt, how much flour would I need? Now we notice that that's really easy. From 2 cups of yogurt, all I did was times it by 2 to get 4. So I would expect that for this recipe, I would need 3 times 2, or in other words, 6 cups of flour. Now, so remember the answer. How do we go from 3 to 2 to n to 4 and figuring out that n is 6. In this example, we just multiply by 2, but how does that work? So here we have 3 cups of flour to 2 cups of yogurt, and we said we wanted 4 cups of yogurt. How much flour will we need? And we wrote n for how much we need. So now, looking at these two ratios, we could write them as fractions. And we know that these are equivalent ratios because we want to keep the same recipe. So how do we write these? So we can write them as n over 4. And now, because we wrote the left-hand side of this ratio as the numerator or the top number, then the left-hand side of the original ratio, 3 to 2, so the 3 is also going to be the numerator. And the second value, the right values, are the denominators. So you must be very careful that if you pick the left value to be on top, then both left values will be on top. So now that we've written them as fractions, we can figure out what n is by getting rid of that 4. And opposite of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4. And then cross out the 4 and the 2. So 2 goes into 2 once, 2 goes into 4 twice. So 3 times 2 is 6 cups. So we know that it works because that's what we expected before. And now we know that we can write them as fractions and solve for their unknown. Now if we had 6 cups of flour, how would we work out how many cups of yogurt would we receive? Would this same method work? So again, it's the same example as before, so we know that's going to be 4. That's what we're aiming for. But let's see if our method works. So we can write them as fractions. Now this time, I'm going to write the right-hand side as a top value because I want to write my unknown or my variable as the top value. I don't like variables at the bottom of a fraction because it makes calculations more difficult. So C is the numerator. That means on the other fractions, 2 is going to be our numerator. So we would write it like that. So C over 6 and 2 over 3. Now to solve for C or to solve for the variable, we would multiply by 6. So we would get 4 cups, what we expected. Now you can use any letter you want, C, X, A. I just wrote C because no reason. So now that we know that works, let's try another example. Here we have meringue recipe, sugar to egg whites, 2:1 ratio. If I had 300 grams of sugar, how much egg whites would we need? So again, we can write it as ratios. This time we're picking the right side to be the numerator, E over 300. Because I'm looking for egg whites, I made the variable E. So E over 300 as a fraction. And on the other side, we're going to have 1 as a numerator over 2. So now multiplying both sides by 300, we get 150. 150 egg whites to 300 sugar. And it makes sense because sugar is double the egg whites. So the egg whites should be less than the sugar. So that's it. Remember to write your ratios using the numerator as the unknown because it makes everything a lot simpler. And whatever side you pick, so if you pick the right side, then the right side of both ratios will be the numerator. And if you pick the left side to be the numerator, then the left side of the other ratio should also be the numerator, and it would work for any example. So that's how you find values using equivalent ratios by first putting them as fractions. I hope that was helpful. See you next time.